The man accused of killing conservative activist Charlie Kirk could get the death penalty. Tyler Robinson making his first court appearance today via video. He's been charged with 7 counts, including aggravated murder. And ahead of his appearance, prosecutors in Utah said they'll be seeking the death penalty and also shared new details, including text messages and a hidden note. CBC's Karina Roman is in Washington following this story for us. And Karina, tell us more about that court appearance today.
As you said, Ian, it was virtual, and he sat in a chair in a suicide prevention smock. And as you can see from those pictures, he was fairly expressionless most of the time. He did nod his apparent understanding at times when the judge spoke to him, whether it was telling him his rights or that he would be appointed a defense counsel because he can't afford one himself. He also was expressionless when it was stated that the state will be seeking the death penalty. The judge also granted Charlie Kirk's widow's application for a protective order to prevent Robinson from making contact with her family. So that was an added element to the hearing. Robinson only spoke once. When asked for his name, he leaned forward and said it clearly, Tyler James Robinson. But this appearance is also when he was formally told the charges that he faces, which include several. Aggravated murder, that's the one that basically would lead to the death penalty if he's convicted. Felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury. 2 counts of obstruction of justice, and that's to do with the hiding of the gun and his clothes that he wore. 2 counts of witness tampering, and that has to do with, as we will get to in a moment, text messages with his roommate, and commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child. The Utah DA was very clear numerous times mentioning that there were children in the audience and in the area when this happened. Robinson was not asked for his plea, likely because he doesn't have a lawyer yet, and so the next hearing is set for September 29th.
And what did Utah officials have to say about the charges against Robinson as they laid them out?
Yeah, so earlier in the day, we heard from the Utah County DA, Jeff Gray, and he insists that seeking the death penalty in this case is not a decision he made lightly. He took the time to go step by step through the day of the event, from the time that Charlie Kirk arrived at the university campus to when Robinson turned himself in a couple days later, and went into a fairly detailed outlining of the evidence, including interviews that were had with Robinson's parents. So have a listen to a little bit about that.
Robinson's mother expressed concern to her husband that the suspect shooter looked like Robinson. Robinson's father agreed. Robinson's mother explained that over the last year or so, Robinson had become more political and had started to lean more to the left, becoming more pro-gay and trans rights oriented.
Now, Gray said they have DNA evidence from a towel that was around the gun, and also DNA from the trigger of the gun that he says matched Robinson's. Then there was the note that Robinson's roommate found that said, and we've reported part of this before, I had opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I took it. Well, that note, when that roommate discovered the note, led to a text exchange between the roommate and Robinson, and Gray today read out a long excerpt of that text exchange, which essentially sounds like a confession. Have a listen.
After reading the note, the roommate responded, "What? You're joking, right? Robinson, I am still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you." Roommate, you weren't the one who did it, right? Robinson, I am. I'm sorry.
Now, after giving all these details, the DA pointed out that none of this has been tested in court. And while many people who might have watched the news conference in which they and that was just an excerpt of the text messages. It was very long. Might think, well, that was quite a bit of detail. And yet the DA also said that he's reluctant to say too much about the investigation, saying that his own family, of course, had been asking him details and he didn't want to give that out because he points out that Robinson deserves a fair trial. It's not clear, of course, at this point what the plea is going to be. As I said, that hasn't been stated yet. So we will perhaps learn that at the next hearing date, as I said, which is September 29th.
Okay, Karina, CBC's Karina Roman in Washington. Thank you. Well, let's bring in Nima Rahmani. She's the president and co-founder of West Coast Trial Lawyers, a former federal prosecutor. And thank you very much for speaking with us this evening. So Robinson faces charges related to aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, obstruction of justice in connection with the shooting. Does anything stand out to you now that we've heard what the charges are?
There's two things that stand out. The first is that aggravated murder, because under Utah law, that carries the potential death penalty. And the state of Utah has two types of executions. They have lethal injection and they have the firing squad as a backup option. The other charges are less significant in terms of the potential sentence, but they're also important. One of them, which includes committing an act of violence in front of a child, is important because it allows additional evidence to come, and the fact that Kirk was killed in front of his wife and kids. So even though it doesn't add anything to the potential sentence, it does add to the bad facts that come into the case. And the other is the obstruction of justice charges related to the text messages that Robinson asked his roommate to delete. So again, that's bad conduct that really goes to his state of mind and his guilt in this particular case.
When the state seeks the death penalty, as they've confirmed today they will, does that change the way the prosecution will handle the case?
It really changes the way both parties handle the case. So the state has 60 days to file their notice of intent to seek the death penalty. I fully expect that to happen. President Trump said it's going to happen. The governor of Utah said it's going to happen. And the Utah County Attorney has said it's going to happen. So it's a matter of days or weeks before that happens. I think that really shifts the case from the guilt phase to the penalty phase. So here in the United States, in a death penalty case, the jury needs to make two findings. The first is whether someone's guilty or not guilty. I think, even though there's a presumption of innocence, that's really a foregone conclusion. There's a lot of evidence implicating Robinson. We've all seen that surveillance video. His DNA was on the towel and screwdriver at the scene. And we have those admissions on the social media platform Discord, as well as these communications with his friends and loved ones that really confess to the crime. So I think it's going to be very hard for the defense to argue that it wasn't him who committed this murder. Then we move to the next part of the case, which is the penalty phase. And in this part, the jurors need to weigh the aggravating and mitigating circumstances in the case. And let's not forget, the United States, they need 12 out of 12 jurors unanimously to return a death sentence. Otherwise, he gets life without the possibility of parole.
Here in Canada, authorities are so careful about not releasing information about evidence because they're concerned about prejudicing a potential jury trial. It's sometimes frustrating for people when you're looking for basic information about why did this happen, to what extent should we be worried, are other people involved, those sorts of things. So quite an extreme approach here in Canada. And I'm sure a lot of Canadians watching that news conference today or our coverage now are just astounded at the detail that came out, including the text messages read in the news conference that seemed to be like pretty well solid evidence that he's guilty. Is it possible, given all that's out there and the emotions swirling around as well, and the president weighing in as well, is it possible to have a fair trial?
Well, it's going to be hard to find an impartial jury that hasn't heard about this case. And, I tip my hat to my neighbors up north. That's really the best practice, not to talk about the case and let the jurors decide it. Because once you have the president of the United States, the attorney general, the director of the FBI testifying before Congress today about this case, all of a sudden you're adding to the pretrial publicity. And that's something that the defense will use to argue that Tyler Robinson can't get a fair and impartial trial. The jury pool has been tainted. Now, I'm not saying I agree with it, but this creates potential issues on appeal. And when you're dealing with a death penalty case, there are mandatory state and federal appeals. Now, obviously, this is a unique case, one of the most high-profile murders in recent American history. And you have this political layer that is on top of it. It's not just a legal case. Everyone is talking about this case, whether it's members of the American public or folks in Congress or even in the White House.
It is a basic criminal sort of principle of criminal justice in Canada, and I'm sure in the United States as well, that people need to have a fair and proper defense, that a lawyer needs to take on a case even for the most odious potential suspects and crimes. Do you worry that in this situation, it'll be difficult to find lawyers to step forward and act for the accused?
I think there will be lawyers who are qualified to take this case. And it's not easy to become a death penalty qualified lawyer. But if you are here in the United States, your number one job is to save your client's life, not to necessarily get them off with an acquittal or not guilty verdict. But you look at some really kind of heinous and high-profile murders recently, there have been some very good lawyers that have gotten those individuals life in prison. And the two I can think of recently are Brian Koberger, the Idaho killer who killed 4 college students in really a heinous act of murder. He got a life deal. And then you look at Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland school shooter in Florida, the worst school shooting in American history. The lawyers in that case were able to convince a juror or 2 in that particular case to spare his life. So it's certainly possible, notwithstanding the gruesome video that many of us have seen, that there are lawyers that step into this case and defend Tyler Robinson. Let's not forget, he's young. He has no criminal history. He did turn himself in. So there are some mitigating factors there, even though, again, it is a very, very disturbing and heinous crime, at least as far as murders are concerned.
It is really nice having your expert perspective on this. Nima Rahmani is president and co-founder of West Coast Trial Lawyers and is a former federal prosecutor and joins us from Los Angeles. Thank you.